You're not a millennial, you're not a boomer. And if you're Gen X, sometimes it feels like no one even notices you. You show up to family reunions, office parties, or Zoom calls, and there it is, the quiet truth. Everyone seems to have a trending social media post, a startup story, or a defining life moment. And you're in the middle, watching the world race past, quietly competent, quietly overlooked. It's not that you missed the mark, it's that society often mislabels you, or doesn't label you at all. Psychologists call this social invisibility. Existing between two dominant groups can make your achievements, struggles, and identity feel invisible. But there's a hidden strength here. Being unseen forces introspection, self-reliance, and resilience that doesn't need applause. Think of Gen X as the middle child of history, not the first to grab attention, not the last to define trends, just quietly figuring things out, adapting, surviving, and shaping a generation in ways no one always notices. And that's where this story begins, with the paradox of being overlooked, yet quietly powerful. Your childhood probably looked different from the generations before or after you. You were the latchkey kid, walking home with keys jingling in your hand, backpack bouncing on your shoulders, and a quiet sense of responsibility pressing down long before anyone else arrived. Divorce rates were rising, economic uncertainty hung in the air, and for the first time, personal computers were popping up in living rooms, alongside beeping video game consoles in basements. If you wanted entertainment, you built it yourself, using imagination, scraps, or sheer curiosity. Behavioral science shows that children raised with responsibility and less direct supervision often develop self-reliance and an internal locus of control, the belief that you can influence outcomes rather than just react. For Gen X, this wasn't theory, it was everyday life. You solved problems on your own, figured out how to manage boredom, and navigated challenges without constant guidance. It was a childhood of quiet growth. You learned to stand on your own 2 feet while the world watched, sometimes noticing, often not. And that independence, curiosity, and early skepticism didn't fade when you grew up. They became the foundation of how you approach relationships, work, and life itself. Being overlooked isn't always easy, but for Gen X, it became a quiet teacher. When the world didn't notice you or assumed you'd fade into the background, you learned to rely on yourself. Psychologists call this adaptive coping. When social validation is scarce, your mind finds other ways to grow. You become resourceful, independent, and quietly capable. Maybe it was thriving in jobs that never made the company newsletter, mastering side projects without applause, or figuring out how to fix something, learn something, or navigate life milestones on your own. Being unseen often forced you to stretch in ways the spotlight never could. Like a tree growing in the shade, your branches reach for the light unnoticed, gaining strength without recognition. There's a bittersweet edge to this resilience. It can foster chronic skepticism or an instinct to keep others at a distance. But feeling unseen doesn't make you unimportant. It forged a subtle, steady competence that quietly powers your life. And this resilience isn't isolated. It intersects with the independence you learned as a child, shaping the way you handle relationships, career choices, and life's uncertainties. Independence can feel like a superpower, but it carries a quiet paradox. For Gen X, growing up learning to rely on yourself became second nature. You figured out technology on your own, managed money without guidance, and often preferred DIY solutions over asking for help. This self-reliance built confidence, competence, and the ability to navigate challenges others might hesitate to face. But the flip side? Carrying everything on your own can feel heavy. Behavioral science calls this the independence-isolation trade-off. Depending too much on yourself can lead to subtle loneliness, difficulty trusting others, or hesitation to delegate. Imagine building your own house brick by brick. Every wall, every roof beam, every detail is under your control, but the weight rests entirely on your shoulders. It's rewarding, but exhausting. The beauty of this paradox is how it interacts with the resilience you developed from being overlooked. Independence shapes not just what you can do, but how you relate to the world, who you trust, how you make decisions, and the cautious rhythm you carry into adulthood. It's a strength, but one you often carry quietly, unseen by most. If independence is your superpower, skepticism is your shield. Growing up Gen X meant seeing firsthand that the world isn't always reliable. Economic recessions hit your parents' paychecks. Companies downsized without warning. Family structures shifted. Promises, big or small, sometimes failed. You learned early that authority isn't automatically trustworthy and that the world rewards caution as much as confidence. Behavioral science shows this is natural. Humans calibrate trust based on past experiences. Repeated exposure to instability teaches the brain to question, double-check, and think critically before stepping forward. You've probably noticed it in small ways, verifying advice at work, researching before taking the next step, or approaching trends with measured caution. You're not cynical, you're strategically cautious, quietly prepared for what might come. Metaphorically, it's like walking across a bridge you built yourself. You test each plank before stepping, not because you expect it to fail, but because you understand the cost if it does. This mindset validates your caution. Skepticism isn't pessimism. It's survival, competence, and quiet mastery. Combined with the resilience and independence we've explored, it forms the backbone of Gen X's quiet competence, shaping a generation capable of navigating uncertainty without fanfare. Every strength casts a shadow, and for Gen X, resilience, independence, and skepticism come with subtle costs. You've carried yourself through challenges, solved problems others might hand off, and questioned what didn't seem reliable. But that quiet competence can leave its mark. Emotional fatigue accumulates when you shoulder responsibility alone. Relationships sometimes feel distant when self-reliance becomes habit. And there's a lingering sense of being overlooked, even when your achievements are significant. Think of it like a lighthouse standing tall in stormy seas. You guide, you illuminate, you keep watch. But no matter how bright your light, it can't reach out for warmth. You see the effort, the endurance, and the sacrifices, sometimes more clearly than anyone else does. Psychology shows that internalizing responsibility strengthens coping and competence, but also increases stress and social distance. Examples appear all around. The colleague quietly running complex projects, the friend always organizing but feeling disconnected, the professional whose skill set is unmatched yet rarely recognized. Acknowledging these trade-offs isn't regret, it's clarity. These patterns are part of your identity, and understanding them allows you to hold your strengths and vulnerabilities side by side, quietly, without judgment.